Hey guys, it's Marco again. Today we will be talking about trinkets for both Kyrian Arcane and normal Arcane. So let's get started. I won't talk about buffs to raid trinkets, which happened, so you can check that in the previous trinkets video. But do bear in mind that raid bots still didn't correct their values for the trinkets. They might do it soon, but I don't know when. Friendly reminder that you should press that thumbs up button so more people can see this video. I'm immediately starting with the newest dungeon trinkets from Tasavesh. Both of these trinkets aren't that good for arcane mages and they shouldn't be an upgrade, so rip peace Tasavesh. But if you have to choose a trinket from here, Soliak's secret technique is decent, but May Elemental is just a DPS loss. Going to the dungeon trinkets, we will first neglect some of the trinkets, like Sunblood Amethyst, which only does decent in big AoE, and I will neglect Satchel of Misbegotten Minions. But do bear in mind, Satchel and Amethyst are mediocre trinkets, so we're left with only 5 dungeon trinkets: Infinitely Divisible Ooze, Soul-Letting Ruby, Instructable Quantum Device, Imperial Ordnance, and Unbound Changeling. First, we're starting with the Ooze, and this trinket is super good for solo targets for both Kyrian and the rest. One more good thing about it is the fact that it's not an active trinket. But the bad news is that its damage drops with more targets, and at 4 targets even Satchel outperforms it. Soul-Letting Ruby is still a go-to trinket for Kyrians in all situations, but for the rest of the squad it's mediocre in solo target fights and cleave fights, but it's gaining a lot of power when it comes to AoE. Quantum Device is a mediocre trinket for Kyrians, but it's a lot better for the rest of the arcane. Imperial Ordnance isn't that good of a trinket for Kyrians, but for the rest, it's by far the best trinket for solo targets, while its power drops significantly in AoE. Lastly, we have another good proc trinket, Unbound Changeling. This one always performs at the middle of the pack, no matter the build. But again, I like to use this trinket or ooze paired with some active trinket. Before we go to the raid trinkets, I have to mention that we have one good PvP trinket, even though it has a lower item level, and that's Sinful Gladiator's Badge of Ferocity. It's still pretty good for Arcane, so if you can't grab Ordnance or Quantum Device, or even Ruby for Arcane, you can grind PvP if you can. But it's just an option. I doubt that anyone prefers grinding PvP instead of just doing a dozen of Mythic Plus runs. Let's move over to the raiding trinkets, which I must say aren't too hot for arcane mages. We'll start with the first raid trinket, and that's Tome of Monstrous Constructions. This one actually has a lower damage output than Ooze, even with the buff, since Arcane casts less spells, but still it's just slightly behind Ooze. Again, in AoE, this trinket drops off a lot. Second trinket on the list is Titanic Ocular Gland. It's a mediocre trinket for all situations, simming wise, and then we also have to tone it down a bit, just because in real situations we won't be above 50% HP all the time. But it will still remain relatively decent. Next trinket on the menu is Shadowed Orb of Torment. And surprisingly enough, it's better than Titanic Ocular Gland for regular arcane boys, and it's a bit worse than Titanic Ocular Gland for Kyrians. We're coming to Painsmith's trinket. This boss is a pretty hard one, and sadly he doesn't offer a good enough trinket for the pain. The trinket is underperforming quite a lot in solo target situations compared to other damage trinkets, on the same item level of course, which is a bit sad. And lastly, Lord Kel'Thuzad's trinket is another great stats trinket, which is kind of a trend with majority of the raid trinkets, and we want to run one active and one passive trinket as arcane. Again, this trinket isn't an active one, so it can't beat our dungeon trinkets in simulations, and those dungeon trinkets are great. But it is certainly a great trinket, and it's consistently great even when it comes to AoE. Now, when we looked at every of the trinkets for Arcane, let's do a quick ranking. Again, I'm using my simulations plus Towgrinder simulations, just so the data is more accurate. But numbers between our simulations are quite different, so it's gonna be a hard task. So I decided to swap this topic into more sections, best on use trinkets and best stats trinkets, since preferably we'll run one of each. So let's see the list. And that's my list. I hope that it's not too confusing. I really had to break this into 2 sections, since I think that it would get too convoluted even for me. So do you agree with my list, or you would change something? But again, I must say that these are just guidelines, not a proper guide. Always remember to sim your character. And today I will also do a commercial for my Patreon. Lowest tier of Patreon gets a permanent access to my Discord server, where you can ask me any questions and have a nice chat. Also, I'm giving away my scripts of guide videos with a bit additional info for Patreons. I'm offering coaching as well at a decent price, log helping, and everything you need to get better at the game. So if you think that the Patreon perks are worth your time and money, consider supporting my efforts there. It will mean a lot. Also, special shout out to my current Patreons. Thank you for your continued support. And that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and as always, until next time, take care.